Okay, hello everyone. Gauthier Roussilhe here. That's actually my first time recording, pre-recording a talk before the actual event. So I feel a bit awkward discussing in front of my screen. So bear with me if I'm doing awkward stuff during the presentation. We are here to talk about 5G. The topic has been growing through the past years, and especially since last year. Now the 5G is at the heart of controversies. It could be like environmental controversies, or real estate, geopolitical, trade, health issues, even on the usefulness of 5G networks and 5G infrastructure. And even recently with the COVID crisis, there have been conspiracy theories that 5G was provoking COVID-19 transmission. So I'm talking here today to try to entangle what have been behind that and how to maybe think about 5G. What kind of lens can we take to think about this global infrastructure, and how do we decide what to do with that? So why am I speaking about it? The fact is that during the self-isolation in France, it happened that I had time to work on about 5G. I decided to work on that because my field of research is actually on the environmental impact of ICT and of the digital sector, of the digital industry. So I was going further in my research, and I was looking at trends. What's gonna influence on the development of the digital sector? And I was looking at, I was searching for info regarding 5G, and I was quite confused because from all the reports I could read and all the existing reports that I have access to, basically everybody was saying yes, and a lot of my questions were not answered, and it was actually quite confusing to see all the reports from everybody, from the big four of consultancies group, lobbies, manufacturers. Everybody was saying yes. It was basically 50 shades of yes. So I just wanted at the time to do my own counter consultancy regarding 5G, knowing that nobody is doing that for citizens, and yet big companies can pay to have this kind of expertise. So actually this report looks like that. Too bad for now, it's only in French and it's being translated in Italian, but it's a 60-page long report with basically covering most of the controversies that have been around regarding 5G. Someday maybe it will be in English. I don't have time actually to translate it right now, but if someone is interested into that, I will be glad to open my data and so on. I published it on the 1st of April of this year, and since now it has been used as a basis for a lot of media in France, mostly because it was giving the whole story in a simple way, and also all the sources I'm giving, I'm quoting everything, and also because I'm mostly working from the literature of scientific literature, and also manufacturers, lobbies, telco operators. So I'm working from what the industry is saying and from the research is saying. So, having said that, the first thing I would like to do with you is actually to tell you what is 5G really about, and even beyond 5G, to understand how does my network, my smartphone, is connecting to a cellular network. So basically, when your phone is connecting, like when you got the bars on your phone of 5G, H, 4G, LTE, and so on, is basically that your phone is matching on the frequency of the antenna nearby. Is synchronizing on two frequencies, one for upload, one for download. Um, so 5G will just be a new frequency, a new spectrum on which your phone can connect if it has a 5G modem or a 5G emitter receptor to connect to this frequency. So right now I'm putting on the screen the different spectrum range that we can find within 5G. I'm using all the data I'm gonna use here is mostly from the French point of view, so it can be slightly different depending on the country in which the 5G is deployed. So right now in France we are using three different spectrums. So the first one is a 700 megahertz spectrum, which has been already used in France. It was used before for digital television and also for enhanced 4G. It will not. We are still using it. It's part of the what we call the 5G spectrum, but it's not actually 5G. It doesn't have a lot of, but yeah, it doesn't have like a amazing broadband compared to what 5G can be. But it has a lot of range, and the signal can propagate indoor, which actually is a big issue, as we see with another spectrum. So the 3.5 gigahertz spectrum has a good broadband, is getting closer to what 5G is advertised in terms of broadband. It has a better range, but it's lower range than the 700 megahertz, and it starts to get less inside buildings. And finally, the last spectrum, the 26 gigahertz spectrum, is one that is actually having like the broadband that has been advertised regarding 5G, which is 1 gigabytes per second. This is the actual spectrum that do that. It can be way higher than that. The fact is, this spectrum has a very little range, especially in dense urban dense areas, and it has a lot of difficulties to go beyond walls, to go beyond materials. Like this signal has difficulty to go through a glass window or a glass door, for example, which is also an issue, especially if you want to deploy it in a urban dense area. If we go a bit deeper in how it works, just to give you a reminder of the range of the spectrum, of each spectrum. So as you can see, like basically on the 700 megahertz range, you can go even beyond 5 kilometers. It's quite good to use it, especially in rural areas, because you don't have like a lot of things blocking the signal, and you can cover a lot of different areas with the same station. The 3.5 can go beyond 1 kilometer and sometimes a bit less. It always depends in the situation in which you're installing the base station. And finally, the 26 gigahertz. It depends, but it makes sense to deploy it normally in urban areas, but it's a worse condition for the signal to propagate. So it's between, on average, we say like 150 meters as a range for the spectrum. So the first thing I would like to see here. So it's that chapter. So I mostly call it like energy controversy because there is a lot of question about energy and not a lot of question about environmental impact, ecological impact, or ecological footprint. So I will kind of dissociate the two and then put it back together at the end of this section. So what we estimate right now is that the energy consumption of the ICT sector is something around 3% per year, like compared to the overall or the global consumption, energy consumption on Earth. And it has a growth rate of 9% per year, which is the highest growth rate of all industrial sectors. The global average is around 1.5%. And at this rate, we estimate that 5% of the global energy consumption will be linked to the ICT sector. If we look at that from the perspective of greenhouse gases emissions, we also estimate that the emission of the ICT sector represents 3.7, a bit more, a bit less, 3.7% of the global emissions, with a growth rate per year of 8%, which is also the highest growth rate of all industries. And at this rate, it could go up to 7.5% in 2025. So right now, the ICT sector, in absolute value, is obviously not the most emissive sector. There is transport, agriculture, building, and so on. But that's the industrial sector that has the highest growth rate. And even regarding waste, like e-waste is a big problem. And it's also one of the sector, it's of all waste, that's the sector in which the growth rate of the growth rate of waste production is increasing the highest. I think it's up to 4% now, 4% increase per year. But having said that, I would like to take a quick moment to redefine with you what is energy, because I realize that not that much person understand different kind of energy that we account in terms of engineering and in terms of life cycle assessment. So this is a little graph showing you three kinds of energies, basically. So there is primary energy, final energy, and I'm not sure if my translation is correct on technical terms, but useful energy. So basically, primary energy is raw energy that you can find in wood, in water, in raw coal, raw oil, raw gas, or in fissionable cores when it comes to nuclear energy, sun, wind, geothermal energy. But you cannot just take the energy as it is, you have to convert it. There is always conversion, energy conversion. So, for example, you need to purify your gas. And to purify gas, it means you lose some of its energy. Or you will make oil into refined fuels. You don't directly pump raw oil into your car or into your truck or whatever. You need to purify it, and all the part when you take primary energy to final energy, there is a conversion loss of, on average, is 40%. And you get final energy that can be like refined fuel, hot water, steam, electricity, which is very important. Electricity is not an energy, it's an energy vector. You need solar panels, wind turbines, steam turbines in the nuclear power plant. You need like fuel power plants to produce electricity. Electricity depends on the primary energy that you are using to produce it. So electricity is not clean at all, depending of how you're making it. And if you are only focusing on electricity to understand the energy consumption, then you are losing at least 40% of the overall energy bill. So it's very important to not focus alone on electricity and to always look on primary energy rather than electricity. Now we are powering the digital sector with energy, with materials. We are emitting greenhouse gases, greenhouse gas. We are polluting. We are producing waste and so on, like mostly all modern sectors. sadly, like most modern sectors. And we invested in this infrastructure to create to specific use. So if we look now at what is at least the kind of data that have been used through this infrastructure, we can realize that now 60% of the global traffic is online videos. There is also other kind of videos, and the rest, like emails, photos, and so on, just represent like 20% of the global traffic worldwide. If we focus only on online videos, most of it will be VOD, so Amazon Prime. I know I don't remember what is the service for videos on demand on Amazon, but something like that. Netflix, Hulu, HBO, Disney Plus, whatever. There is pornography, there is tubes, so mostly YouTube to be fair, and there is social networks. So right now we're using the infrastructure for that. And when I was looking at that, there is several. When I was looking specifically on the ecological footprint, including energy footprint of 5G, I saw a lot of questions that haven't been answered in any of the reports. So I might try to translate them right now. So, uh, how does the deployment of 5G infrastructure is impacting on the energy infrastructure? What will be the energy and the ecological footprint of manufacturing new equipment, new antennas, new cells, new backhauls, new smartphones, new IoT, 5G powered IoT? What will be the energy and ecological footprint of forced renewal of devices that are not compatible with 5G and that you will be forced to replace if you want to have access to the 5G network? What will be the energy and ecological footprint of waste management of all this e-waste? And at the end, what is like the total sum of all these footprints together? And there is one specific question that has been the only one answered by the industry, is the one of energy efficiency, which is a tricky one, because when you are talking about energy efficiency of a cell, of a macro cell, you can obviously say that at a constant value, let's say for 1 gigabyte transferred, a 5G macro cell will use way less electricity than a 4G macro cell. I think I have a graph here. Yep. Yet it's just electricity. So that's why it was important to understand the difference between final and primary energy, because it will the carbon intensity of the electricity used there will depend on the primary energy you are using to produce this electricity. And we are only speaking here on this graph on the constant value, which is how much electricity I need to transfer 1 gigabyte, knowing that the 5G networks will increase traffic a lot. I think like Ericsson estimate that by 2030 will consume around 80 gigabytes per month per user on a mobile device. So at the same time, obviously we are making gains regarding the electricity consumption of cells to transfer 1 gigabyte, but it will be compensated by the vast increase of data traffic. So in most of the reports that I've seen, Huawei is basically saying that the electricity bill for base station is likely to be multiplied by 3 or 3.5. Ericsson is saying it will stay the same, but other researchers say also that Even if the energy efficiency is multiplied by 10 between 2020 and 2030, the traffic will be multiplied by 100. Even some say that it will be multiplied by 1000. So if you're increasing your energy efficiency by 10, but your traffic is multiplied by 100, then you are still multiplying your electricity bill by 10. I don't know if it's clear, but you will tell me in the Q&A. I'll try to estimate a little bit what will be the new device and equipment that we have to produce in order to deploy 5G, and I use mostly literature from the industry, from manufacturers, to assess that. Between 2019 and 2025, we assume that we're going to deploy worldwide 6.6 to 13.1 million new antennas, mostly between, it will be macro cell and a little bit of small cells, a lot of IoT. Like it's always super hard to estimate what will be the number of IoT devices being deployed, but a low-level hypothesis will be 16.7 billion connected objects. And regarding smartphones, you can go between, I mean, if the sales are declining, you can go down to 800 millions, and if the sales are actually increasing at with a growth rate of 1 to 2 to 3% per year, then it will be we're gonna sell like 3.3 billion smartphones in the next 5 years, which will replace 4G devices. We can talk about health issues or health controversy, because I guess it's a big topic in in a lot of countries. I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert regarding health issues because I'm not a biologist and I'm not a physicist, and I'm not specialized in oncology or cancer development. The issue that we have is that the NGO that is deciding of the level of exposure regarding electromagnetic fields had a weird story. I mean, not that weird actually, but it's just in the continuation of specific powers, basically linked to the creation of the World Health Organization. Right now, the NGO called ICNIRP, NIRP, I don't know how to say that, has two fundamental issues. Its budget is hidden since 2008, so we cannot really see who's funding them. So I took some screenshots of the budgets in 2007 and 2008, and you can see that the income, 1/3 of it is going from governments, which is fine, and the other is coming from a line called others, which is problematic because if there is conflicts of interest, then we cannot know. It doesn't mean that the research is biased. It doesn't mean that the research is fundamentally wrong, but we cannot assess how industry, manufacturers, lobbies are linked to them, which is problematic, but which does not say that the research is wrong. We cannot judge preemptively the quality of that. Secondly, it's something also linked to the scientific method. The ICNIRP is mostly composed of physicists and little of biologists, so they will mostly focus on the nature of signals, the nature of frequencies on a physical level, rather than a biological level. So they are focusing on the heat effect provoked by exposition to electromagnetic field. But they will not look at what we call adverse effects, which will be possible cellular damage or cancer predisposition linked to the exposition to specific kind of frequencies. Having said that, it's very important to say it's not the frequency in itself that is problematic. It's the condition of exposition, which means it's how long you've been exposed, to which extent, for how long, what is the frequency on you being exposed to this specific spectrum. So it's not just because it's 3.5 gigahertz as a frequency that is dangerous. It's always a condition of exposition that we have to assess. And for example, the actual standard of exposition is linked to research regarding at effects of exposition for 6 minutes. So I don't know why, but the norm is based on a 6 minute exposition to a specific frequency on a specific part of the body. So we're also lacking a lot of data regarding that, and we're still gonna miss a lot of data, because if you want to do like let's say like a solid health investigation regarding your exposition to 4G or 5G frequencies, you will need to follow a cohort of people, like 20-30,000 people that have been exposed to the same condition of exposition, so length, duration, frequency of exposition, for 10 to 15 years. And then you have to follow the same group, another group, which is not exposed to the same condition. And this kind of research is not going to happen. I mean, not likely in this year, and it's not likely that industry will wait for such an inquiry. You might be wondering also why 5G is useful for. So we have a pyramid that has been created by Nokia, I think. So there is 3 big area in which 5G is thought to be useful. First and foremost, on the public, on the consumer market, it means enhanced mobile broadband. You got more throughput to watch videos in higher definition. We don't have that much. We don't have that much cases like to say that it would be fantastic. We just like most industrials and manufacturers are thinking that no, it would be useful to watch 3D videos, 4K, VR, AR, but beyond that, I don't know what it would be useful for. Secondly, it's a second area called critical machine communication. So we need very low latency infrastructure if you want to remote control specific area of the industry, or if you want to enable communication with critical machines such as autonomous cars. You need to be able to respond very quickly to requests of this kind of vehicles. The last area of use is what we call massive machine communication, MMC, because 4G had not really been thought to support that much connection coming from IoT connections, and 5G has been thought for that. So you can connect 1 million units per square kilometers. It will be used mostly for smart city sensors and everything that you can call smart, I guess, with all the issues that comes with that. That's it can be video surveillance or other things, but it depends of what you think of the smart city to think if this is useful or not. Okay, I think we are almost done. Maybe one last point on geopolitical aspect, on the geopolitical controversy. Right now, 80 to 90% of the French traffic is linked to US services. Google, Akamai, Amazon, and some others, and are the one actually pushing the increase of the traffic. So right now, it's a weird thing that we have French telecom network operators that are investing with their own money to build an infrastructure that will be useful for US services. So whatever the infrastructure is Chinese or not, there is still something that is weird, that is that we are building that for American services, so they can extract more data. If I'm a bit cynical, but why it's actually getting more interesting, that the French network telecom network operators have a corporate tax of 7%, while at the same time GAFAM or GAFA they have a corporate tax of 0.3% going through Ireland. So how does the fiscal justice is taking place into the building of a network infrastructure is a big question. And from the European position, I understand that from one side we need to be careful with the investment we are making regarding China, yet we have to understand that we have been completely colonized by the American way of developing the digital sector. And we also need to think, how are we shifting away from that? Because US is a complicated partner. So I just wanted to make this point, like to make something that is to make something visible that not a lot of people see apparently. So, and to conclude, after all of that, is after writing this report, actually I saw three things that was beyond 5G or bigger than 5G, or on which 5G was just a stepping stone to get to something higher. The first one is that 5G controversies are actually questioning the actual developments of the digital sector that have been mostly influenced by American companies and corporations, and investing in infrastructure for increased traffic, increased connection, and so on, is following the model of development of the USA, which we have to think of. We need to think about if we want to keep going that way and to follow the American lead, which is an open question. More specifically in France, but maybe in other countries, I don't know. The 5G crystallizes the end of the French state's model of infrastructure development, which was very top-down, very authoritative, inherited from the end of the 60s and from the 70s. And now we can see that on every level in a French state, when there is a big infrastructure development, there is contestation. It can be wind turbines, electricity power plants, airports, 5G. The way the state have been imposing the global infrastructure, I think, is no failing, and we need to understand, like, how can we do in a different way when we think of developing the nation infrastructure. And it cannot be authoritative anymore. It has to be thought from the territories, from specific places, not from a global perspective of the state. And I think I would stop there, and I'm stopping the recording, and I will wait for you in a Q&A to answer all your questions. Thank you very much.